Good morning, and welcome to the Running with Nutrition podcast. My name is Ellie Adams, and I'm a nutrition student at Southern Wesleyan University. I also run cross country and track here. I'm excited to take a dive into nutrition and running with you today. We will be focusing on the importance of macros when running, specifically focusing on protein and fats and their importance in running and recovery. When it comes to running, most of what you hear about is carbs. While carbs are very important in running, protein and fat also have a huge role to play. I recently got another teammate to send me a picture of one of her meals. Her plate was well balanced with carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, which made me interested in diving into protein and fats because a lot of what is talked about, as I mentioned previously, is the carbohydrates. Here's what her plate looked like. She had a grilled chicken breast with about a serving of avocado, so we'll just say like a fourth of an avocado. She also had a portion of brown rice along with black beans. So about half of her plate was covered with carbohydrate sources. But what about the other half? It was proteins and fats. So, what role does this play in a runner's diet? Carbohydrates, proteins, and fats are important for the high impact of distance running and the recovery after running. This means that each of these macronutrients is critical for a person who wants to have a successful running career. They're important for any person, but especially somebody participating in vigorous activity like college or marathon running. They're going to need all three. Since carbohydrates are not the focus of the show today, we'll just go ahead and touch on a few things that they can do for runners before moving on. They're the primary fuel source, so most of the energy that comes to fuel running comes from carbs. Common sources of carbs can be complex options like whole grain breads or pastas, or in my teammate's case, the brown rice on her plate. Other examples that may be more simple and some complex are fruit, some dairy options, legumes, which is the black beans on her plate, and starchy vegetables like sweet potatoes. These sources of carbohydrates also have nutritional density, which means she's going to be getting vitamins and minerals into her diet along with the macronutrients of the protein and the carbs and the fats. So now that we've touched on carbs, let's get to the main focus, proteins and fats. It is suggested that endurance athletes, like runners, should consume at least 1.8 grams per kilogram of body weight each day and no more than 2 grams per kilogram of body weight of protein each day. During long and intense training periods, that 2 grams per kilogram might be necessary. This means for a 105-pound runner, this could look like eating between 85 and 90 grams of protein during training, but as intensity increases, it might look like more 95 to 100 grams of protein each day. Protein recommendations can be highly individualized, which means that every person or runner is a little bit different, and they might require a little bit more or a little bit less depending on what their body needs. So what does protein do for a runner? Muscle protein synthesis and breakdown occur both during and after endurance exercise. So protein intake supplies amino acids to remodel damaged proteins and synthesize new muscle proteins. This means that protein helps repair muscles that accumulate damage and need repair during endurance activities like running. It is recommended that for the best benefits, a runner should consume protein within 30 minutes of finishing their run. While this may seem really specific or make you have to rush to get back to eat, this is what maximizes the recovery benefits that the runner is going to get from the protein. Furthermore, jumping back to the importance of carbs and all this, carbs and protein can have a greater impact when consumed together. Studies have shown that ingestion of protein with carbohydrates can augment glycogen resynthesis in the muscles when a runner is recovering from exercise. Carbohydrates are still the primary fuel source, but combined with protein after exercise, they can have an added benefit. This means that when consuming that post-run protein snack, adding some carbs to it can have an added benefit too. It is also recommended that runners space their protein throughout their day. When it is consumed in segments throughout the day, this maximizes absorption and the efficiency with which it is absorbed. Some of the best protein sources can be from animal sources like chicken, fish, poultry, or even eggs. But some runners may be on a vegetarian diet, which can make it a little bit harder to meet their protein needs and repair muscles, so they have to be very specific on what they're eating. The best protein sources recommended by dietitians for vegetarians are things like tofu, tempeh, soy, lentils, legumes, nut butters, and seeds to increase their protein needs. Some dietitians may recommend supplementing with a protein bar or powder, but it's important to look for the bars or powders with the fewest additives or none at all, and bars that don't have high saturated fat contents from oils. One last benefit of consuming protein from plant and animal sources is that it can add essential vitamins and minerals that can optimize recovery for the runner, just like from the highly nutritionally dense carbohydrate sources. This means that protein sources can do more than help a runner meet their protein goals, but they can also add essential nutrients to the diet that one may not be thinking about when they are consuming them. As we get into the segment on fat intake and running, here's an important note. Fat and protein can also help with carbohydrate absorption. This means that fat and protein may have their own roles in fueling and recovery, but they also work with the other macronutrient, carbohydrates, to increase their benefits. With that noted, let's move on to fats. It is recommended that 20 to 35% of energy intake for a runner come from fat, which is about 0.5 to 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight, depending on training and intensity. This would mean that for a 105-pound runner, this would look like 24 to 70 grams of fat, depending on the person and their needs and their caloric intake. With this recommendation, it is also recommended to shoot for sources of fat in the form of unsaturated fats because they have long-term health benefits rather than your saturated fats. It is also suggested to pay attention to fat intake just before running to avoid gastrointestinal distress. This means that just like protein intake, fat intake can be spaced throughout the day for the maximum benefits. So, after recommendations, what is the point of consuming fats as part of a runner's diet? Unsaturated fats incorporated in one's diet can improve cholesterol levels, help with inflammation, and aid brain function. When it comes to running, fat can be fuel when carbohydrate stores are depleted during longer runs. This can help someone have a better performance at the end of the run if they have an adequate intake of fats. Also, incorporating fat into their diet can reduce the risk of injuries. This helps reduce inflammation, repair muscles, and provide hormones needed to support a healthy recovery. This shows that fat not only provides fuel for runners, but it also aids in the recovery and is essential for preventing injury. Additionally, fat can also be used as a fuel source in training when intensity of workouts increases. This can help the body during races because it learns to use more fat as fuel and not relies heavily on carbs. This touches on the importance of consuming adequate amount of carbs and fats for the best impact on endurance performances. So what are the best sources of fat for runners or anyone? Fats can be in the form of nuts, nut butters, olive or avocado oils, regular avocados, or fatty fish like salmon. While fats may not take up as much room on the runner's plate, this does not mean that they are not essential to fueling and recovery of a runner. So there you have it. You might hear something about running and immediately think of carbs, but proteins and fats play an important role as well. As we discovered, protein and fat intake can even help a person absorb carbohydrates better, which increases endurance performance. Proteins and fats also aid in recovery, which is just as important as the carbs needed to fuel training. Training is critical for runners, but recovery is just as important. My teammate's plate was a great way for her to fuel performance and enhance recovery. She had carbs, but she also made sure to have proteins and fats on her plate as well. Well, this has been fun. Once again, this is Ellie Adams, and thank you for listening to the Running with Nutrition podcast. I look forward to the next topic on the importance of nutrition in the life of a runner.